Hello, everyone, and welcome yet again to another episode on New Life Show on AUK Radio. I'm your host, Yinka. Now, New Life Show is about all things health and well being and every other thing in between. However, on this show, we are not here to diagnose, cure, nor heal any ailments whatsoever. What we provide you with is information. So if you're thinking of making changes to your lifestyle, please do consult your healthcare provider in the first instance. So today's show is no exception. We will be talking about something that affects almost every home on planet Earth. And what is that? That is parenting. So today we're talking about parenting in these uncertain times. I mean, let's face it, parenting, nobody gave us any manual on how to raise children. So many times there's trial and error. But when we think about the pressures of economic pressures, digital world, how are all these things affecting how we parent? So on today's show, I have a special guest who is going to share her personal story and, of course, give us some tips on how to be the parents we ought to be to our children in these uncertain times. So my guest today is Morin Carew. I'm going to read a short bio. All right. Hi. Good
Hello.
afternoon. Welcome to
Good
the show.
afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation to come. I'm sure some people are wondering what does parenting have to do with our health and well-being, but it does have something to do with it, doesn't it?
A great deal. I mean, the thing is, if you're a parent and your children are not giving you peace, you're possibly going to have serious mental health problems.
That's right.
Even when your children give you peace, just parenting alone, being responsible for another
Oh,
human
that's
being is a whole load of responsibility. And you need
absolutely.
a real good mental well-being to be able to
Mm,
cope with parenting no matter
yeah,
what. So
yeah.
yeah, very
Okay.
much what would I say, very much
Very, very much linked together to our health,
exactly.
both
And
physical
I
and
was going
mental.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, it's crucial,
yeah,
crucial to
absolutely.
mental well-being.
Okay. Well, she's already given us some hints on what she's going to share, but I'll read about my guest today. So, Morin Carew is a devoted Christian mentor, speaker, and ministry leader with a deep passion for parents and the next generation. Our ministry journey began at age 19, inspired by our early experience as the eldest of four sisters in Nigeria. She has served faithfully in various church roles with a strong focus on family discipleship and youth development. Maureen leads Mothers Unite, a quarterly prayer initiative for moms, and she founded the RRC Youth Hub, a mentoring space for young adults aged 18 to 35. And I remember my first daughter, she was one of your mentees.
Yes.
She also runs a Saturday Bible club for children ages 5 to 11. She's a regular speaker at parenting events and a vibrant presence on social media. Maureen shares wisdom on faith, family, and parenting. She's married with two young adult sons who love the Lord, and she lives out her message with authenticity and grace. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yinka. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I know you
Yeah.
already gave us some tips on parenting, how that impacts our health.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I'm going to be sharing definitely the things that I've done well and the things I didn't do so well that I have learned lessons from so that
yeah,
other people don't make the same mistakes.
absolutely, absolutely. And I try to remember that saying about when they say experience is the best teacher, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your own personal experience.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Actually, you're better placed when you're learning from other people's bad experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
Because it
that,
gives you a vivid imagination and, crucial information to go with, so
yeah,
you avoid those mistakes yourself.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you once again. So my first question to you will be, can you share a little about your parenting journey? What shaped your style and values? And sorry, what shaped your style and the
Mhm.
values you prioritize as a parent today?
Okay, so I'm going to say that I think my parents, especially my mom, shaped my value and my style of parenting. And why do I say that? As you've rightly alluded when you were introducing me, talking about the fact that I was the first of four girls in our home.
Mm,
And one of the things that my mom did was she befriended us. We were friends with mom.
mm,
We could discuss anything with my mom. Nothing was off the charts. We talk about sex freely. We talk about friendship. I mean, my
mm,
mom was really open, transparent, and she opened the door for our friends. In
mm,
fact, there was a time when my one of my friends was a librarian in one of my son's schools, and she said to me, "Oh, Maureen, do you know why we used to come to your home? It was because out of all of us, your home was the only one or very few where both parents were, together, and
mm,
also that you had an open door policy. And that's what has shaped my life and helped me also with my parenting my my sons, who are young adults now.
mm,
So I think my family background did a lot to prepare me
mhm,
for parenting. In Nigerian culture, when you're the first girl in the home,
mm.
it gets to a point where you you don't even know, but you just assume responsibility at a
Yes.
certain age. I remember at a time when my dad said to me, "Now your mom's going to sit down and you're the one that's going to be cooking for us." And I remember the first traditional okra stew that I made. Oh, my dad said, "Okay, I'll give you 4/10, but I'm going to eat it with love." So you can imagine growing up in that kind of home kind of
Mm,
prepared me for
yeah.
parenting. So that by the time I had my children, it became second nature
Yes.
how to relate with my children, because I had to bring my younger ones up. I remember the two
Mm,
last borns of the family. I used to go to their parent teacher meeting, for
mhm.
instance. My parents had retired,
Wow.
in a sense, from parenting. So I assumed all those responsibilities. I would sit down with their homework and everything. So by the time I had
Mm.
my own children, it was just an extension
Yes. Yes.
of the parenting that I've experienced growing up. I mean,
Wow.
when my parents had their last two, I called them and I said to them, I said, "Look, if you don't stop giving birth to children, because then by then we've become eight," I said, "I'm going to run away, because on my holiday, in those days, there were no Pampers." I said, "I'm always washing nappies. I'm tired." I said, "Oh, my holidays, I'm always babysitting. I'm tired. If you don't stop having children," they laughed, but I think they got the message, because there were no more children after that.
The babysitter officially resigned.
Closed, ended, expired. So today, my parenting is really anchored in those values of honesty, transparency, being open with your children,
Mm,
helping them to relax in your presence, because
mhm.
it's very important. When the typical Nigerian or African culture is children
Mm,
are seen and not heard. And unfortunately, some people have carried that over
yeah.
into their own parenting. But thankfully, my parents, especially my mom, encouraged
Mm,
us to speak.
mm, mm,
And so, having my own children, I wanted them to be my friends, even though,
mm,
yes, friends, but of course, they knew where not to cross
mm,
the line.
mm, mm, mm.
So, you're friends, but you're firm.
That's
And
right.
passing on those values as well
Mm,
to them,
yeah.
and helping them to walk in the faith that I have in Christ as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank
Listening
you.
to you, thank you for that. I mean, listening to you about being open with your parents. I mean, I had a similar kind of relationship, especially with my dad. We could talk about
Mm.
any and everything. And just to think about the society where we grew up, it's
Yes.
not the norm.
No, it's
It's
not.
not the norm. So yes, obviously that has trickled down to your parenting style, my
Exactly.
parenting style.
Yeah.
And just to hone in on the points about that not being the norm,
Mm.
but like you said, children being heard, being
Being
seen but
seen and not
not
heard.
heard. And some of us have carried that into our
Mm.
parenting style.
Exactly.
When we think about the United Kingdom, for example, so many of us have migrated from
Mm-hmm.
Africa to the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and our children are stuck between two different cultures.
That's right.
So it's navigating that, isn't it?
Yes, it's very tricky. It's
Yes.
very tricky because, for instance, I mean, for people like us who were blessed to have parents who are open with them,
Mm,
it's not too bad.
mm,
But where you have the typical African culture where children are seen and not heard, it's very difficult for such parents to actually help their children. And usually you find that children in those homes rebel,
mm,
and the reason
mm,
why they rebel is because they are in between two cultures. In fact, incidentally, I was counseling a parent yesterday, because she felt like the path that one of her children was following was
mm.
not good. And she said, oh, but she's going to stand firm. And I said, look, you run the risk of losing
Is it?
that child
Mm,
if you come down
mm,
hard on that child. And I said to her, you have to understand that sometimes these children are confused
mm,
because when they're in the home, there's
mm,
there's a different set of culture. And then at school, they are encouraged
mm,
to be their own person, to explore, to
mm.
discover things. Whereas for us as African parents, we're more like protective and we want to do things for our children.
Yeah.
So I said to them, you have to understand where these children are coming
Coming
from
from.
and be empathetic rather than, oh, I'm going to manhandle this situation. And
Mm,
we discover that many African parents are losing their children. If you don't lose them to the government, you lose them to the society. And it's really helping your children to navigate between the two cultures, helping them to understand the wealth and the richness of our African culture. And for
mm,
us to also realize that when we were growing up, we didn't think those things were good. We just
mm,
kind of like rolled with it because we didn't
mm.
have any choice. But
Choice.
here,
Yeah.
our children have
Mm-hmm.
a choice.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
say goodbye to us, and the government will receive them with open arms and they will
Mm,
be lost to us. And these are the things that I try to pass down to parents. So I'm not saying that parents should be indulgent,
mm,
but if you cultivate an openness culture when they're growing up, they will find it easy when they're confused, when there's a clash of values, they'll find it easy to discuss those things with
with
you
you.
rather
Mm-hmm.
than keep them away from you
Mm,
till when they now feel like they have to rebel and
mm,
go against what you want. So it's really helping parents to understand that it's very important to befriend your children. Befriend them, they're not your friends. You
mm.
befriend them, create an enabling environment in
Environments.
your
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
where children can come. Like my children, I remember when my second son said to me, Mom, I think I need a girlfriend now. And I said, really? Okay, let's sit down and discuss it. We discussed it, the pros and cons, and he decided, actually, you know what, Mom? Yeah, you're right. It's not yet time for me. But it wasn't under stress. It wasn't because I
Mm,
said, oh, over my dead body, what are you talking about? And screaming. To be honest, I was shocked, but I didn't show it.
mm,
Plenty of practice,
mm,
when he was growing up, plenty of practice not to show the shock. And I said, oh my God, I said a quick prayer under my breath. And I said, God, give me guidance. And then we started, I said, really? Okay, let's go. Let's talk about this. And, we talked about it and, he felt relaxed and said, yeah, Mom, I don't think I need all that kind of hassle right now.
good. Good decision.
Exactly. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. But and they asked me all sorts of questions. I remember
Mm.
one time, they asked me, "Oh, so do you and dad?" I said, "Of course, it's a gift of God." And they went, "Eh." I said, "Yeah." So you have to build that environment where your children know it's okay to
Mm.
discuss issues with you. I mean, there was a time I had to tell my children, please, I don't know everything, because they're always coming home. I said, please, can you remember that Google is your friend? your mom your mom doesn't know everything. I had to let them know, because
Mm.
everything is, mom, I heard this. Mom, I said, okay, let's go to Google together, because I don't know this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's how close we are,
Yeah.
that they just feel, oh, just ask mom, she'll know everything.
Mm-hmm.
She knows
Yes.
everything. She has an answer to everything. And that's because we talk a lot.
Yeah.
And by God's grace, I've been able to pass down a lot of wisdom to
Mm.
them, that
Mm.
they feel comfortable to rely on my
Mm.
suggestions
Mm.
to them, and also recommend those suggestions to their friends.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes I hear that, my mom's, and I'm like, okay, now,
So
mom, mom is the encyclopedia.
yeah, apart from Google, there's mom.
Exactly. Oh, well, mom is the Google now.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well,
So
well done.
yes, those two cultures, the clash cause
Mm.
confusion for our children. I think parents need to understand that.
Understand.
And I
Yeah.
think when they do understand that, they will be, like I said, empathetic towards the children, to
Mm.
understand and realize that, you know what, we grew up with just one culture, but they are in
Mm-hmm.
between two cultures. And
Yeah.
we have to help them to understand and know what is good in one and
Mm-hmm.
what is bad in the other, and then merge the two, so
Mm-hmm.
that they are the better for it rather
Yes.
than the worst for
Mm.
it.
Mm. Excellent. Very good. Very good answer to that question. Yes. So my next question is, with so much happening in our world today, conflicts, economic pressure, online influences, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing or seeing in other parents right now?
Hmm. Thank you very much. I think in any society whatsoever, and in any generation, the media has always been a threat to homes. The
Mm.
reason being that
Mm.
the media can propagate values that are anti the values of your home,
Mm-hmm.
especially if those values are very indulgent and you know, for instance, if you're a Christian, there may be some beliefs that are being shared on media, not just social media, but on media generally.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about television, radio, and the internet as a whole. And so there's always been that danger. I remember as young children growing up, even in Nigeria, there are some programs that our parents will not want us to watch,
Yeah.
because they think that they're not good for the values that they're trying to
Mm.
promote in
Mm-hmm.
our homes. So media has always held a threat for families, especially wholesome families who promote, you know, honesty, uprightness, and all of that. Now, am
Mm-hmm.
I saying that media as a whole is bad? No, because that, for instance, there are Christian televisions, and I know that for other religions as well,
Mm.
there are media resources for them as well. So, of course. But then the thing is, do you want to limit your children to only those media? Even if you do, again, we're
Mm.
talking about our children living in between two cultures. They go to
Mm-hmm.
school and they're open to other forms of media.
Yeah.
I remember when my son was in secondary school and he was doing drama. Now, the kind of drama that he was exposed to, I was like, I think I'm going to take you out of this drama class, because
Wow.
some
Mm.
videos that they were watching, I felt like, they were too explosive,
Mm.
for their
Mm.
age. And
Mm.
I
Mm.
really kicked against it. I said, look, I'm coming to see your drama teacher myself and tell him this is against, our values at home. So
Mm.
for every generation, there's always been a threat of media. But however, we know that things have gone on a greater scale.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like even
Yeah.
adverts,
Yeah.
showing bombs and all that at 6 p.m. I'm like, oh, excuse me, what's going on? And so I have to say that society has become more permissive
Mm.
of bad values. You know, we used to trust the BBC, for instance, before. I don't even trust the
Mm.
programs on BBC, because in those days, BBC used to show a lot of nature, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, wholesome
Documentaries.
programs. But now, you'll find all this bickering, and there are subtle messages that are being passed across
Mm.
through
Mm.
media, where sometimes men's roles in the lives of children are being demeaned and
Mm.
undermined. And so you find that there are some programs that children talk anyhow to their dad, and there's all this push for feminism and stuff like that. And yes, I'm a woman. I'm proud to be a woman, and I don't feel subjugated in my relationship with my husband. But there are some messages that are being passed across through media that make the role of men in the lives of their children seem like it's not, is unnecessary,
Mm.
to say the least. And so, yes, when you have that as well going on, especially, I mean, I remember during the COVID period where, children had to work from home. And
Mm-hmm.
some parents said that some of the uh, links that the children were given as children as young as 11 almost seemed like the links were almost like to pornography sites.
Wow.
And the things were really explicit, and parents were really raising out the alarm that, excuse me, what are you teaching our children at this very young age?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of parents are overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed, and they're having to watch their children. You really have to build safety nets online for your children. You
Mm.
have to watch them. And I remember a particular incident, and I'm going to be very vulnerable here, where my son, for some reason, his dad just looked up, and we saw him, he had taken a photo, of himself. And we said, "Oh, who are you sending that to?" And he
Mm.
had met somebody online. And this is us who, we're prayerfully watching our children. We're, you know,
Mm.
and we had to call him and say to him, "Look, you're exposing yourself to grave danger here. You cannot befriend anyone on internet, especially those who are telling you to send you their photos and everything." And we
Mm.
just had to be very careful and really, really be firm with him on that
Mm.
occasion. And
Mm.
that's how subtle the invasion of
Mm.
media into
Into
our
our
homes.
homes.
And you
Yeah.
hear horror stories of especially girls who are told to expose themselves, take photographs of their nakedness, and
Mm.
send it to people
Mm.
online. So if
Mm.
there's been any generation where we need to be alarmed at the threat of the internet, I think
Mm.
it is now. And then
Mm.
sometimes I just sit and I wonder, I said, look, every generation, these threats escalate. I don't even want to imagine what's going to happen when my children have children and I have
Mm.
grandchildren. I'm just like, like I can't even bear to
Yeah.
imagine the kind of
Yeah.
danger
Yeah.
they will be exposed to at that time,
Mm.
come 10, 20 years down the line. I just wonder how the world will be
Be.
and what the internet would be at
Mm.
that age. So
Yeah.
it's very important for parents to be aware.
Mm.
Sometimes I know that because of daily bread, we have to leave our children.
Yeah.
Honestly, the first 3 years of each of our children, the first one, my husband stayed home. The second one, I stayed home. 3 solid years we gave to each of them. Why? Because we wanted to build a solid
Mm.
foundation. And
Mm.
it paid off, because when they were in school, in primary and secondary, they would remove themselves from particular classes to say, our parents have do not allow us to watch this.
Mm.
And that's the way we have brought them up. Even when they go to our friends' homes, they used to say to their friend, because they will come and say, "Oh my goodness, your children are not allowing us to watch certain programs," because they'll say, "No, no, 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 that's not good. The
Mm.
mommy said we
Mm.
shouldn't watch this," and all
Mm.
that. And that has helped them in shaping who they are today. And
Yeah.
now my children can hold their heads up freely amongst friends, and not be ashamed of who
Yeah.
they are. They're, solid and rested in their identity,
Mm.
as God's children, as their parents' children. They don't feel ashamed to say, oh, I can't tell my friends that I'm a Christian, or I can't tell my friends that I can't do this or do that, because we help them to grow confident in
Mm.
who they are, and
Mm.
to appreciate the values that we have passed on. And that's what parents need to do.
Mm.
Parents
Mm.
need to, sit down, spend time with their children, and not
Mm.
let them spend so much time on the internet. Find
Mm.
other things that can interest them. I take my children for walks, for instance, and it's during those walks that we talk.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
first one, we would walk to we would walk to the market and back, and I would have passed down a lot of stories about his grandparents, the times when I was naughty, and the consequences to my naughtiness, and the lessons I learned from
Yeah.
those naughty moments.
Mm-hmm.
So they know not to do those things. If there was one time my son, before they go to it, say, oh, mom, tell us one story about when you were a bad girl, when you were naughty. And that's how open I have been with my children. But those moments are crucial moments and wonderful moments to pass down values. It's not
Mm.
when you're telling them off that you share values. It's
Mm.
those times when you are relaxed. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the times when they can take those values in,
Yeah.
because they're relaxed, all their guards are down, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just there to soak up information from you. Those are the moments when I pass down crucial lessons of life. And it's the same time that I tell them, social media, you need to learn how to um, sift
Mm.
information.
Mm.
I have a very strong, as you know, I have a very strong social media presence, but
Mm-hmm.
I know why I'm there. And
Mm.
that's what I say to them. And when I go on the internet, I know what I'm looking for. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about being focused, it's about knowing who you are and helping our children to know. Because the thing is also, and I hope I'm not taking too long to answer this
Hey.
question, but something just came into my mind. One of the things, that I've noticed as well is, even when your children don't want it, friends can send them porno. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, just send them stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the ones looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I prepared my children that way. I remember when my younger one was going to go to A levels, I told him, I said, look, I'm a girl and I wasn't born a Christian. So I'll let you know, girls will come and approach you, and they want to be your friend. They want to go, all the whole yard, and I prepared him. And you know what? It happened. As I said,
Mm.
I said, oh, mom, it happened. I said, that's
Mm.
why I'm preparing you.
Mm.
And these are the kinds of things that we need to prepare our children. So I told them, look, I said, somebody may pop some, photographs to you. You are the one that will make up your mind if you want to go further. So even when you're
Mm.
not looking for it, people will
We
pass
can
them
pick it
down to
for
you.
you. Mm. Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
when you prepare them, then it's not a
Yeah.
shock to their
Yes.
system, because
Yeah.
they've been prepared
Mm.
for such, instances that
Instance.
would
Yeah.
happen. So
Mm.
they'll know how to handle it, because then I'll teach them this is the way to handle it. Just refuse
Mm.
it and tell them strongly, no, you're not, part of this. You
Mm-hmm.
don't like this kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
that you will remove them from your contact list if they persist.
Mm.
And you just teach your children to be firm, but you
Yeah.
yourself need to be aware that they are
Mm.
open to this danger. And I
Yeah.
think that's the important thing for parents. You need to be informed. You need to know what's going on right now.
Mm.
I speak my children's language, So
Mm.
I was
Mm.
speaking to a gentleman. Look, this is me. I have so much information.
There's so much
I was speaking to
stories.
a gentleman, and I said to him, we were having a conversation. So I said, oh, and you pump up, oh, auntie, and he gave me the elbow thing, like, wow, you catch the drill. I said, yeah,
Yeah.
I make sure I get myself relevant so I can converse freely with
Yes.
young people. So they always
Yes.
feel at home with me, because
Mm.
I speak their language. I made up my mind that
Mm-hmm.
because I want to, be able to mix with them and
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help them, I know
Yeah.
that I need to be able to speak their language
That's
and
right.
understand, even if I don't speak it, understand
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
language. And
Mm.
that really
Mm.
breaks down a lot of barriers. And I
Absolutely.
think parents need to calm down their high
Yeah.
horses and begin to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a time for us to rumble and tumble with
Mm.
our children, and there's a
Yeah.
time where we draw the line. And my
Mm-hmm.
children know. I'll tell them, okay, this is the serious mommy now.
Mm-hmm.
This don't cross this line. And they respect that
Yeah.
because we've had the rumble and the tumble. So now
Mm.
they know, okay, this is the firm time. This is
Mm-hmm.
mom being serious now. And they
Yes.
respect
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that.
Well, thank you so much. And that's covered my next question. But I just wanted to point something out
Okay.
about, okay, so you are fortunate to have had good parents,
Yes.
but there are other people, for
Mm.
whatever reason, are not
Yes.
as fortunate. Now they
Mm.
have children.
Mm.
It's like trying to give out of an empty cup. You can't.
Mm. Mm.
So I suppose this is where you would suggest what parenting classes, or what would you
Exactly.
say to parents like that apart from
Mm.
from parenting classes?
Yes. So, from all the things that I've been saying, you'll notice that one thing that I've said is education.
Yeah.
You need to educate
Yeah.
yourself. As good as my parents were, they were not perfect. And so, what I did was I noted the things that I didn't like about my parents' parenting. And I said to myself, I will not do those things. So, it's
Mm,
about educating yourself. You need to have a desire to be better.
mm,
You need to
mm,
have a desire to want to parent your children the right way. You see, a
mhm,
lot of times, and this is not just even for African parents, parents generally, no
mm,
matter what culture you come from, you need to have a vision of the kind of parent you want to be. It starts with that. Everything
mhm,
starts with vision.
mm,
Okay, you
mm,
didn't have a good time growing up. So,
mm,
what does having a good time look like to you? And
mm,
how do you want to prevent your children carrying on that story, that
mm,
horror story? So, you have to desire yourself.
mm,
And so that
mm,
means that you need to have a vision, you need to have a goal
mhm,
as a parent to say,
yeah.
before you even go into parenting, when
Mm,
my husband and I we got married late in our 30s, and
mhm,
then we waited 2 years. And the 2 years we waited was for the plain reason that we felt like we didn't have enough time, even though we had, as people would think, because we courted for about 4 years, but because we
mm,
belonged to different churches, and our church meeting days clashed. So we
mm,
didn't really have much time in terms
mhm,
of really getting to know each other.
each other.
So
Mhm,
we thought, the first 2 years would be a time for us to really get to know each other
mm, mm.
properly. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
And so we traveled and everything. But what that helped us to do was we decided what we wanted as parents.
Mhm,
For instance, we didn't even allow parents on either side, to visit us until we decided this is how we want to treat when our children are hiccuping, for instance. This is
mm,
what we want. This is the solution we're going to tell both mothers.
mm,
And because you discover the mother-in-law will come with her solution, my
mhm,
mother will come with her solution.
mhm.
There's going to be confusion, and you don't want
That's
to
right.
offend anyone.
Mhm,
So it was better for us to come up with our own parenting style that we passed on to both mothers. And when both mothers now came, we told them what we wanted. We had
mhm,
spent time with our children, we'd gotten to know them before we allowed them to come and visit us. So both of us, my husband and I, we were on the same page, and we
mhm,
had made up our minds. So back to that question, you need to have a vision.
mm,
You need to, don't let your parenting be dictated by society. Don't let
mhm.
it be dictated by your own parents, because they were not perfect. Now, does it mean that you are perfect? No, you're not.
No. Yeah.
But you are the parents, not them.
Mm.
And you know what you want. But sometimes you discover that people fall into parenting, they don't plan it.
Hmm.
Do you
Fall
understand?
into
They fall into
parenting.
parenting. They get married, honeymoon and all that. Okay, children come as a byproduct, but they have
Mhm.
no vision. And so the child goes to school, there are issues, they don't even know how to handle it.
Hmm.
Whereas for us, both my husband and I, maybe because we're first, I'm after three boys, but I'm the first girl, and my husband is the firstborn. Maybe because of that sense of responsibility, we
Mm,
came into
mm,
marriage and parenting, with vision. with
Yeah.
goals. We didn't fall into parenting. We didn't fall into marriage. We knew exactly what we wanted as
Mm.
husband and wife. We knew exactly what we wanted for our children. So
Yes.
when, for instance, our first didn't settle with a nanny, we knew immediately what to do. It
Mm.
didn't even take us fasting and praying. We knew. You understand? Because we have a vision.
Mm.
So don't fall into parenting. Please,
Mm.
for the sake of those children that are coming into your life, you have to think, what do I want for my children? Plan it. So by the time you get pregnant, you're already, forming a path that they're going to follow.
Mm.
And it's not because you want to command and control, it's because you love them, because that's a different kettle of fish.
Mm.
There are parents who think, I'm just going to lay down the law, that's it. No, it's not going to
Mhm.
work,
Mm. Mm.
because they're human beings, they're not machines.
That's right. That's right.
They have feelings. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to bear that in mind. But I think
Mm-hmm.
vision is very important. As a parent, why do you want to have a child, for instance? Is it because you want, because I used to say to my children, you'll be my retirement investment. Is it so that they can look after you in your old age? So you have as many, because if you split, if each one gives you £100 every month, you cover your salary. you know or do you just want children because you want to be able to say, oh, I'm fruitful? Or are
Mm.
you aware that you're responsible for lives, and
Yes.
these are gifts to the world?
Mm.
There's a benefit that these children are going to bring to the society. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be a drain, but they're going to be not a pain.
Mm.
They're going to be a blessing to the world. So the way you raise them is very important, but it starts with vision. I hope I've answered
Vision.
your question.
Wow. I think we need a parenting class with you, or classes with you now. Yes, thank you. You did answer that very, very well. Because from what I hear is having a vision why you want
Mm,
to be a parent, and of
yeah.
course educating yourself from what you've said
Mm-hmm.
throughout, I mean, so far.
Mm, mm,
So that brings me to my next question.
mm.
So for parents that fell into parenting, I know I know all is not lost,
No.
but what would you say to that, apart from being, educating ourselves and having a
Mm.
vision? For those that didn't have a vision, we would say to educate themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That it
Okay.
really starts with education. I mean, look at
Mm,
us. You're born into your home, for instance, even, without even going to school, you're being educated at home, because we teach our children, no,
mm,
don't touch that. That fire is gonna burn you.
yes.
That's education.
Mm,
Passing
mm,
down
mm,
information. So you need to understand, wherever you're at, get yourself educated. I didn't have such a good time growing up. Get educated. First of all,
mm,
get over the pity party,
mm,
because nobody had it 100% right. Yes, I understand you grew up with pain, with sorrow, disappointment. But the thing is, you cannot stay down.
mm.
You cannot. For the sake of, if you're going to have children, you cannot pass down that pain. It's just going to run through generations. It's got to stop with you.
So,
Tell
yeah.
yourself the buck stops here.
Mm,
It
mm,
stops here. There are some things that my husband say to one another and say, this is where this stops. It's not going to be
mm,
passed down to our children. And you have to be you have to be resolute and be very determined.
mm,
You're not going to allow your pain to stain your life. And that's what some of us do, you know? That's what some of us do. And some of us, like I said, we don't spend enough time with our children, because children are a normal byproduct of marriage. We're
mm.
not thinking that we're developing human
Mm, beings.
beings that are
Mm,
going to be a blessing to the society. We just think, oh, okay, children come because we're married, or because I had sex with my partner and
mm,
children have come, and
mm,
that's it. No, you need to have a vision for them. So
mm,
no matter where you're at, even me, I'm still educating myself.
mm,
Every day I learn new things about parenting, because my children are growing up. I'm learning new things about them. I'm learning
mm.
new things, because it's not every time they cooperate, so I have to go to God and say, okay, God, how do I handle this? I have to get educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're all being informed every
All the
single
time.
step of the way. But the thing is, are you willing? Are you
Mm.
open enough to let go and allow yourself to grow? Because if you
Mm.
don't let go, you will not grow. You have to
Mm.
let go of the past. Even the ones that are good, it doesn't mean that it's relevant for now.
Mm.
So you have
Mm.
to realize what is good for you to carry on with, or the things that you have to drop. You have to
Mm.
let go to grow. So that is so important. So any parent that is here, please, all is not lost. No matter the stage, or how good or how bad things are,
Mm.
there is always an opportunity for growth.
Was excellent. Well, thank you. So we've heard today vision,
Mhm.
education, and growth.
Yeah.
All about parenting. I suppose. Oh,
Yes.
also, this can apply to other aspects of our lives as
Oh,
individuals.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask for a child. What are some of the signs of a child who's struggling silently but emotionally, and how should parents step in? What are some of the signs
Mm,
to look out for, and how to support
mm.
the child?
Right. So one of the key red flags in any child is when because you see, as parents, especially mothers, we are very sensitive to changes in our
Mm.
children.
Mm-hmm.
And you will just notice, even the quiet ones, they will be more withdrawn than ever before. And this is why it's very important while they're young to have cultivated that environment of openness. So
Mm-hmm.
immediately you see that there are changes, then you ask yourself, what's going on? And then you can
Mm-hmm.
call the child and say to them in a non threatening environment, this is you
Mm-hmm.
approaching the child as a friend, not
Mm-hmm.
as somebody who wants to lay down the law. And you can just say to them, I've noticed a few changes. What's going on? Like my husband sometimes will tease my younger one and say, oh, is it Shakira? Or, he'll just roll out a few list of female names, and my son will just laugh and go, Dad. And that breaks the ice.
Mm-hmm.
Find something that will break the ice, that will help you to be able to have a proper conversation, a friendly,
Mm.
non-threatening conversation. But
Yeah.
you will notice a change. That's when you know that there's something brewing,
Yeah.
and is it worth investigating? And I'll give you an example. So I noticed my younger son, he's very much like me, very sociable,
Mm.
and he was a little bit withdrawn. So I said to him, what's going on? And then we discovered that he wanted to embark on something that we're still negotiating. If you see what I mean. I'm not at liberty to expose that right now,
That's fine.
to reveal that. But that's what I'm saying to you, that we were able
Mm.
to get to the bottom of things, because he was just a little bit withdrawn.
Mm.
And we noticed that because my son would come home, he always had tales of what happened in the day. And you just discover, okay, we're not hearing those stories anymore, because we always
Mm.
looked forward to, when he comes home, yeah, we're going to hear stories. What happened? Is either, he was able to advise his friend about something, or he
Mm-hmm.
spoke to somebody about the Lord, he invited somebody to church. There will always be something. But those things started reducing. His brother had left home,
Mm-hmm.
he works outside London, so he's had to move away from home. So of
Mm-hmm.
course that affected him,
Mm.
because he
Yeah.
and his brother were very
Very
close. They
close.
are
Yeah.
close,
Yeah. Yeah.
So of course he feels the absence
Yeah. Of
of his
course.
older brother
Yeah.
in the house,
Mm.
and then I think that has now rolled into something else that we are discussing now. So
Caught in
but
session.
thankfully, yes, but thankfully not any cause for alarm, if you see what
Yeah.
I mean. It's
Yes.
nothing
Yes.
alarming. It's
Okay.
just him wanting to grow up maybe quicker or sooner than
Yes.
we
Yes.
want.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But talking about the red flags, you will definitely see a change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's very important to be sensitive to your children.
Mm.
And they'll be
Mm.
grateful for it. They may think you are poking your nose, but I'm telling you,
Yes.
secretly, they enjoy the attention,
Mm.
and
Mm.
later in life, they're going to thank you for it. I mean, you and I am sure. even with our parents that were very strict. We look
Mm-hmm.
back now and we're grateful that they were strict with us
Absolutely.
on certain
Yeah.
things because we don't know. As children, we're very self-centered, we're very
Mm.
selfish. It's just the kingdom of I, me, and myself.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see beyond our noses. And so children, always think, oh, my parents are at it again. So I always tell them before they tell me, I say, I know you're telling me I'm poking my nose. Yes, I am going to be in your face in this one. Because I know better. Yes, I
Yeah.
know better. I know you will say, parents, you know better than me. But I said, no, I know better than you in this one. So I always preempt them. So they just look at me like, okay, mom, you said everything. So you win, hands down. I say, yes, of course. But like I said, keep that enabling environment so that your
Mm.
children can open up to you.
Yeah.
Right from when they were young, I've made them to realize that they can hardly shock me with any
Mm.
question or with any revelation from them. And so that has helped them to be very comfortable
Mm-hmm.
in sharing their troubles. Like when I said to you, one of my sons says, oh, maybe I should have a girlfriend. I
Mm.
doubt many children will be able to say to their parent, I want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And you will sit down and look at the pros and cons.
Mm.
A typical family probably would say, what are you saying? Because he was 16, you know. When he came and he said, I think I need, you understand, not
Yes.
many children would be able to tell their parents
Mm.
things like
Mm.
that. We
Yeah.
talk about, there's hardly any subject we don't talk. We talk about sex, we talk about masturbation, we talk about everything,
Mm. Mm.
because I don't want them learning from outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can give them, and the 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 propensity towards going out
Mm-hmm.
is escalated by us as parents not
Mm.
trying to build that enabling environment.
Environment.
So it's very important. You will see the red flags if you're close to
Mm.
your children, but if you're not and you still
Mm.
see the red flags, then honestly, I would advise to seek professional
That's
help.
a, yeah.
Yeah, because at that point in time, it will be too late for you to
Mm.
try to really get anything out of them. Because
Yeah.
if the relationship is not there, you
Mm-hmm.
can't force it at that point in time when there's trouble.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
always good to build, to have that relationship, that non-threatening environment before trouble comes. But if
Mm.
trouble does come, then you would need professional help
Mm.
because
Mm.
you can't bridge that gap in
Mm.
the time of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So seek professional help, I would
Mm.
say.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that answer. My goodness, I still have so many questions I want to ask.
Oh
So,
my!
but we haven't got time for this today. We will be having a second episode, and of course, I'll be inviting another person to come on the show with yourself, so we can talk more about parenting,
Mm,
particularly in our community.
mm.
Just one last question. So, can you share with us one parenting mistake or hard decision that taught you a powerful lesson, and how did you grow from that?
Mm. Right. Oh, wow. I have to really think.
You're a perfect parent.
Yeah, I know, aren't I? Oh, wow. I hardly make mistakes. Indeed. I mean, there have been times when I've had to apologize to my children, to be honest.
Mm,
I can't really lay hold of a particular example, but one of the things that I have learned in my parenting journey is
mm.
never feel too big to say sorry
Sorry.
when you have made a mistake.
Yeah.
I can remember a few times when I've had to go back to my children and say to them, I'm really sorry, I didn't handle that conversation
Mm,
well.
mm, mm,
I overreacted.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember a particular incident now. So, my first son, we gave him a curfew at the time, and he was flouting, violating the curfew consistently. So, one day I called him into the kitchen. I said to him, I said, look, if you don't want to kill me before my time,
A typical
then you have to
African
make sure.
response.
Yes. I said, then you have to keep this curfew. But then what I did was I sat him down and I explained to him. I said, look, I am afraid. Can I be open with you?
Hmm.
Can I really open up to you and let you know why we've given you this curfew? I am afraid. I am afraid for you. So call me overprotective, call me whatever you want. This is
Wow.
me. Do you want to kill your mom? No. But you know what? He just melted. Like, I've never seen my mom this way. My mom's so
Mm.
vulnerable right now. I actually need to comfort her and assure her that I'm going to be a good boy from now.
Oh, bless him.
I just had to be, real,
Mm.
So situations like that. And then, of course, like I said, times when I've overreacted. I remember there was one particular moment I overreacted. When my husband came, I just went to confess to him. I said, today I crossed the line and I will never. And I was so, bogged down with guilt. I had
Mm.
to,
Mm.
apologize to him. Oh, it was terrible. So yeah, as much as I know, I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't shy away. I put my hand up when I've done wrong, and I let them know, okay, I didn't make the right decision at that
Mm.
time. Can you
Mm-hmm.
forgive me? And I'm genuine, I'm not like, oh, okay, I'm really owning up to my mistake and apologizing. And as parents, we should never be too big to apologize to our children.
Apologize.
And I think it really
Yeah.
teaches them that
Hmm.
being vulnerable is not a weakness, but a strength.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for being
Thank
vulnerable,
you.
for sharing your experience as a parent. I'm sure
Yeah,
many of our viewers and listeners have learned something, one or two, at least one or two things
hopefully.
today. Yes. So, like I said, we will be having part two because this is a big, big topic.
Oh, yes, very
Yes,
wide.
it is very, exactly. It's very well. So, there you have it, viewers. Parenting in this current climate isn't easy, but it's not impossible.
Yes.
From the constant worrying about our children, all of this takes its toll on our health, both physically and mentally. So prioritizing our health, they say self-care is not selfish, it's essential. So it's always, as with everything, it's finding balance. So like you said, not being too big as a parent to apologize to your children if you've overstepped the boundary or you've done wrong to them or said
Yeah.
something that you should have said to them.
Yeah.
And that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Maureen. I've really thoroughly enjoyed myself and learned.
I
And I'm
have
thinking
to.
back, like, okay, maybe that particular incident with one of my daughters, I should have handled it better. But maybe I need
We
to go
learn
home and
every day.
apologize. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We learn every day. So
Yeah.
thank you once
All right.
again. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to inviting you again for episode 2
Thank you.
sometime in the
I'll be
future.
here.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
again, thank you to our listeners and viewers. And remember, let's get wealthy together by staying healthy. Until next time, take care.